Thank you, Sonali, for that beautiful introduction. That was actually my first time seeing that video. Yeah, so as you just heard, I am sort of your neighborhood necromancer, is what I would call myself. And first things are first, introductions. Professor Molina-Garcia is going to be taking a little bit of a nap today. For the duration of this conversation, I am the persona, alter ego, or entity known as Axima. I appeared as the feminine presence of the body and the person that you see in front of you. Anima comes from a Jungian concept that describes the female shadow or soul that accompanies the masculine persona. So during a particular strong storm of inspiration, I simply replaced the N for an X to indicate effacement, refusal, and an exit strategy. X to negate my subjectivity. So why renounce the self, right, for these robes? I see it as a return, not so much a departure to a sacred oneness. This excerpt from Carmen Bullos's 1993 fantasy novel, The Miracle Worker, explains what I'm doing quite clearly. So in the novel, a fictional woman only presented to the reader as La Milagrosa, the miracle worker grants wishes by allowing others, their pleas, their histories to enter her dreams. And this ability is presented as a craft in a devotional training of the self. So she says in the first few pages, me propuse hablar de una única persona, y esa soy yo. Yo, 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 yo. I intended to speak of only one person, and that is I. Es en mí donde se manifiesta la capacidad del milagro. It's in the I where the capacity for miracles manifests. En mi persona más que en mi cuerpo opera la posibilidad de lo imposible. It's in my person more than in my body where the possibility of the impossible happens, right? Think of a hive mind saying this, so this doesn't have to be narcissism. If humanity as a planet was saying this, I speak as the human race. It's in us, where miracles manifest. Us as a unity, an organism, more than any single flesh, where the impossible operates. So to what do we owe the pleasure of this form, this kind of spiritual armor that I've taken? Well, the purpose of this visit isn't exactly joyous. I'm here because the world is on fire. We are near extinction, and I am militantly sad about it. I am like proposition number 75 in Maggie Nelson's 2009 book, Bluets. I have felt myself becoming a servant of sadness. But unlike Maggie, I have found some beauty and misery worth sharing. Or rather, when misery is shared, there is some beauty. And I hope you don't misunderstand. So I'm not a messiah, I'm not a savior, I have no prophecies. I am closer to a pauper or a beggar. This talk right now is a type of supplication. I am at your feet, actually. This magic I use is very modest. The only thing that I do is recompose pain. Aesthetics are crucial to this, my project, but this isn't about aestheticizing violence or pain. If we understand aesthetics to originally mean the alteration of perception, then I consider myself a seamstress or a quilt maker of and for the departed. My talk today is about art in the wake of death. As the Thoth tarot deck imagines it in this graphic, numerically, art, card 14, comes after death, card 13. So what are the aesthetics of this type of remembering after tragedy? Which ingredients do we place in that cauldron, and for what, right? Catharsis, perhaps? And some will say, Axima, this moment is not marked by a special type of suffering. It's just that the technological means of gazing at such violence have increased. And to that, I defer you to Roland Barthes in Camera Lucida, quoting Marcel Proust. I do not insist only upon suffering, but upon respecting the originality of my suffering. And these days, I'm mostly thinking about the premature deaths of brown people and our nations. So I'll play this to you, I'll translate it as it goes along. This video appeared to me on my Facebook feed in 2016 in the weeks following the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida.
Aurelia Martínez no puede con su dolor.
It begins, Aurelia, how much do mothers suffer to maintain and caretake their children? The voiceover continues, Aurelia Martínez can't with her pain. Just a few hours ago, she was informed one of her sons, Juan Chavez Martínez, of 25 years old, died at the bar Pulse in Orlando, Florida. She only wants the return of his body. Help us, support us, we're humble, dear Lord. The voiceover continues, Juan left a decade ago to the US to try and give his parents a better life, both farm workers. He was illegal, as were 3 of his brothers that also live in the North. And Aurelia keeps going. He was the one who maintained me. All my kids helped me, but only a little because they're married and they have their own families. They didn't help me like he did. As I'm watching this, something starts to come undone. Was this trauma sad for queer communities, for America, gun safety advocates, for immigrants, or for the undocumented? To whom does this sadness belong? So in order to enter this conversation, like the magician who holds mastery over his quadruple implements, we have to discuss what sort of magical containers or objects are available in this effort, right? This effort for the construction of an aesthetics of pain. So this is what I will be unfolding in 3 parts. So let's enter the first of the 3 fables for this evening. It's 2016 and I'm back in Dallas in time to hear and see coverage of the police shootings that occurred that summer when a sniper, a Black veteran who was trained by the US Armed Forces, killed 5 cops and wounded 7 others at a Black Lives Matter protest. Complicating matters worse from a cybernetics point of view, the death of the killer became the first time a department of the US law enforcement used a robot to remotely and autonomously kill a US citizen, thus breaking the first rule of Asimov's law of robotics. A robot must not injure another human being. So what began as a peaceful march downtown the city to protest police brutality on behalf of life, right, for life to continue, became a clarion call, as the Omni Hotel would state it here on its facade, to back the blue, the very same blue that had taken life in the first place. So there's a kind of recursive madness to this. The Omni Hotel, to give you a little bit of a debriefer, can be considered a type of innocuous sort of leisure architecture that beautifully captures, I think, the spirit of late stage capitalism. Standing at 23 stories high, it is most easily recognizable for its LED megastructure that wraps around the building and behaves like a pixel screen. It occupies the visual field of the commute-heavy city and transforms the skyline into a daily and contingent billboard, advertising everything from Mary Kay Cosmetics to an embarrassing sponsorship by the National Rifle Association. During a commute to work, I feel I see the last remaining Black Lives Matter sign in Dallas off the highway, buried inside a rotating carousel of small-time ads about fixing cars. The video that you see on the top left corner. So you see, I make fakes, I make counterfeits. My work for the past few years has largely been in the business of counterfeiting American forms of control. This would include legal bureaucracies, its languages and written symbology, and of course, the camera, which is used for surveillance and architecture, used for prisons and everything else. The two, lest we forget, photography and architecture, have a shared history. Since the camera obscura is both a room, a physical structure in which one walks in, and a camera, a technology to capture light and shadow. And this recursivity, this mad, noxious repetition of the Dallas commercial class and its rulership is how it happens. I realize I can simply recreate the Omni after the image of the mechanic shop. Their sign, Black Lives Matter, Se Habla Español, potentially tells commuters a different story. You matter. And I learned from this, words conjure, and words conjure all kinds of ecstatic realms. And that is a lasting breakthrough of the project. Sometimes art makes you arrive at very simple conclusions. And I told people that my building was the real thing and the real one was the fake. Dallas had the counterfeit. I owned something else. And people laughed like I was telling a joke, which I kind of was, but this is not superstition to behave as if I can spellcast my way out of here, out of the now, by repeating names. It is what we would call hyperstition, driving fiction to a point that it manufactures new truths and values, right? Back to miracles. I felt like Jesse in the video game Control, released August of 2019. I was harnessing objects of power. In the titular game, you become entrapped in a brutalist government building that shifts its geometric forms and faces. The building has fallen ill, becoming the host of an interdimensional parasite known as the Hiss. And it's up to you and your parakinetic abilities to bind infected objects, the so-called objects of power, giving Jessie, once she has captured these objects, new telepathic skills, right? So the miracle, purely defined from a secular point of view, happens after reworking the self and its imaginary. So it's a question of a when. When does it happen? Now, how do we come into being with these objects? How do we come into a better coexistence with forces that may appear so antagonistic to us, so far removed, withdrawn and silent? The search can be an intricate game in itself. As an aid to move forward, allow yourself to enter into a second fable and illusion. Fast forward to July 2018, my family and I are in El Salvador. It's our first time back. And for the first time in more than a decade since our immigration to Texas, I see my earth and where I come from. I become enamored with the imminence it offers, this daily divine inspiration. Everything feels like it's on the tip of my tongue, so easily named, and things simply reveal themselves to me. I'm enamored with the eruption it's having inside of me. We climb our way through the park that my uncle takes us, but are stopped short by a fringy stick and wire fence that bars entry for further passage. The other side is gang-dominated territory. And I think this is an interesting case of a micronation that has settled itself inside, nested itself inside an already minute nation. And only a threadbare fence mediates them in this eruptive volcanic conflict. Rewind to 2016, and I'm in Mineral Wells for the first time, a park in the North Texas area just west of Dallas. Much like the motivations behind my disguise today, I went to the park to disappear. It was 2016, that year that felt like 5, and I spiraled into a paranoia about ICE stop points and the expiration date on my legal documents, fearing I would be reported. And I will say that again, reported, not deported, because I feared being given away, being turned in. So I traveled to get away, a sad pilgrim, walking amongst the rock formation, and I saw a vision. The border will never get me. I will hide. I will build a suit to house the immigrant. It's now 2019, and I built a suit to hide in Texas terrain, fantasizing about dropping these suits as safety packages at the southern border, thus turning border crossers into cyborgs. It was the attempt to try and describe this bolt of inspiration that happened at Mineral Wells, at both the site and the site of the rock, right? Because this involves both perception and the experience of being there. It's geology, the mineralization of an idea that motivated a version of this talk last June when I lectured on the topic of divine rocks to a group of artists in Dallas. Shout out to Sweet Pass Sculpture Park if you are in the audience. Our conclusions then were somewhat simple, but still critical. Firstly, what is magical about the rock? What we find is that the rock is at the center of an ontological rebellion. They possess a kind of gravitas, says the French surrealist thinker and writer Roger Calois, being something that will never perish or else has already done so. So entities that do this, I think that straddle limits and borders in this way must be respected, for they have a certain magical effect on us. But they have to be understood on their own terms to be able to participate with a fraction of that intelligence, right? A lacuna of knowledge that behaves like the call of the siren in its seduction. Next, we asked, can the subaltern speak? The answer is no. Who or what is the subaltern? So this is a field of people and objects that are not represented as subjects in law, politics, or cultural production. The animal, the mineral, and the vegetable expresses this for me into a neat figurative trifecta. However, human bodies are sometimes one or all three. For example, how is the child like a vegetable, requiring extreme care, vulnerability, providing and demanding emotional nutrition? Like a mineral, prized, rare, enamored? How is the child like an animal, unruly, unpredictable, and disobedient? I don't have a child, right? So I can only speculate about this, but maybe you, whoever the parents in the room, maybe you know something about this. So if we hope to make work about the subaltern that is engaged in a serious, legitimate effort, then this affair cannot rely solely on reason and logic. What is mute, what does not talk, cannot be relied upon to articulate or provide testimony. Representational methods, therefore, have a limit when it comes to silent matter. And even if they do, and even if the subaltern is able to mutter a gasp of air, or are represented in a heart-wrenching photograph, our colonized epistemics will prevent us from listening. However, and there's room for hope, we owe a great deal of gratitude to a lot of post-colonial thinkers for this. Question 2, can the subaltern be felt? It's an ellipsis, so the answer can only be delivered non-linguistically. The path to follow, perhaps. This is why I think Gayatri Spivak, in her iconic essay, Can the Subaltern Speak?, advises us that in order for the subaltern to stand a chance, you must render delirious that interior voice that is the voice of the other in us. Said another way, behave as if you're performing a surgical operation on the self to understand the other. So how did we engage the object of power known as the Omni Hotel and its particular silence? How did we reach delirium? Buddhism tells us that negation, as we saw with the Omni Hotel, negation could be a state of refusal. Negation will function to empty dualistic conceptions of the world. Negation is how we break free because we arrive at a moment without biases, without the impulsive discriminations that are part of logical thinking. Negated, we are one, a single one without object or subject, and enter into a space of extreme sensation. Additionally, one can train the mind with the great 4 unbounded attitudes, otherwise known as the 4 immeasurables, because they cannot be contained. Impartiality, equanimity, also justice perhaps, sympathetic joy, 3, compassion, and 4, love. Something tells me that Western thinking has stopped at justice, impeded and overshadowed by legal codes, mired in concepts of law and punishment. We try and make attempts to touch the subaltern, for example. We may feel an overwhelming desire to do justice to the minority body, but retract if we fear retribution, being canceled. So we put ourselves back into the penal colony. And then there's love. Black feminist theory has plenty of insight into this. Bell Hooks or Audre Lorde, who write elegantly about love. The scholarship tells me that Black women in America are some of the few figures writing politically about love, liberation love. But take note that it emerges out of explicitly tragic circumstances, meaning love is known because of a collective heartbreak. We're familiar with a concept, or the concept of systemic racism, but there may be something else, an addition, that is closer to systemic heartbreak when it's nationwide, that is also regressing us on a grand scale. I say all of this because I think without knowing it, I have been deploying these feelings or these attitudes or psychoanalytic positions, whatever you want to call them, to construct my acts, whatever these are, right? Is the Omni now a container for love or a container to be able to hold injustice in thought? Back to the rock. Fast forward to 2020, it's a week before the COVID shutdowns start, and I find myself committed to another complicit relationship with rocks, this time at the US-Mexico border, where I went to see Big Bend National Park for the first time. I descend further into an abyss, feeling as if I'd reached the edge of the world, as it had been extended to me up until that point, as a trapped non-citizen of this country. This is the place we've been told as children never to get close to. This is a repellent that you feel from hundreds of miles away. The border, right? Capital letters. I dated a flat earther for a time. And when I went to the park, I thought this trip would dispel and disabuse someone of that notion, that conspiracy. The truth is that the earth is already flat to a lot of people with precise limits on movement and motility. But for the rest of y'all, you get to live on a sphere of infinity, and you don't see how lucky and graced you are. La Milagrosa, she says in her book, you fools, you are wizards of your own destiny. You govern the world of dreams without knowing it, somehow thinking that these bodies that we carry, these corporeal cages, will somehow change that sovereignty. And it's not lost on me the whole time there that then, now in the span of 4 years, child detention centers have been normalized, and we've entered a new form of objection. The child is being mutilated on the big screen because all of this is happening as if we're watching it in high definition with our consent. All of this is running through my mind while I'm looking at this rock. VCU hires me the previous year before Big Bend happened, so I get access to special effects Hollywood software. Every now and again, I will write to a company and I say, hello, I am a professor, can you please give me free things? And that usually works. So this is a program called Massive, which was designed for the Lord of the Rings film trilogy to render its epic battle scenes. The program allows the animator to give a kind of virtual intelligence to individual digital figures that are able to respond and interact with environmental stimuli. In this way, the animator is freed from the monotonous labor of rigging each character. They behave with their own intelligence on their own accord. I feel the spiral of geologic time. I fall down the fable of terraforming, changing the surface of the earth. I realize my suits for immigrants can be housed inside a cyber terrain, that I can design a child army composed of my nieces by using Massive to let them find their way through holes, caves, openings at the border. How can we imagine a radical artificial intelligence? I'm intrigued by the possibilities. Is this a demolishment of the land or a return to a pre-colonized space? You're seeing here in the video a photogrammetric rendering. So it's just simply a 3D object that is generated by software automatically after I feed it still images that came from a drone video that encircled the rock. I took the stock default 3D models of humans that you are offered in the program Massive and placed them on top of the digital renders of Big Bend in the first attempt at prototyping the terraforming idea. So this remains a sketch. The brown colors are added by hand in the darkroom using an experimental method called chromosclerasic Sabatier. It's a two-part chemical painting process that changes the size of the silver crystals so that they scatter light sporadically, producing an aberration of colors that can even make the paper appear reflective, like a mirror. So the rusted colors you're seeing on top left, that's because of the chromo. A second leg of this project inserts 360-degree panoramas back into Google Earth after I have heavily edited the images. So as much as it, I think, pains me to do this, I kind of have to reveal some of my tricks. So I take several shots of myself without moving the camera, which has two fisheye lenses on each side, in the front and back. The camera itself then digitally stitches the two pictures together, creating this elongated format that you see before you. Next, a digital negative is printed after the figures have been removed to reveal only a white silhouette. Printed then on paper, the printed positive on the right undergoes the same chromo process. That positive, the image on the right, is scanned and stretched, returning it back into a wide shot panorama, and finally reinserted into the Theta software, creating and producing this rotating globe. It appears as though daylight and the nocturnal converge. They meet on a line, and I wonder at this browned, literally browned world, a world that has gone brown, made to pulsate in their wake, every soul that has been lost in an attempt to reach the other side, their dreams, right? If seen through a VR headset, the image becomes a stereoscopic rattle and shake because it records the movement of my neck. Humans have no gimbal technology, you see. And now the interactive portion of the presentation. This is, if you have a phone with you, you can pull it out and open the camera app. And this is also true for anyone that is attending the virtual audience. This will take you to Google Earth. And I hope hope you trust me that I'm not gonna send you to some spyware website or something. And now you're seeing the same image from before, but it's on your phone. I see a note that's written in my notes app from a long time ago. After teaching class and seeing one of my demonstration, the monster, on every classroom computer come alive. And I think I have this thought that runs through my head because this might be a cool title someday. The pleasure of infecting a system. But the infection isn't pathological. It's the most benign contagion. It's modest magic, after all. The photograph becomes non-teleological in your hands. On which device does it end, right? Where is its terminus? Which version is its true form? Is it the globe, the diptych, or your portrait-oriented image? Finally, at a point, I think all I'm doing is capturing and preserving their light and transmuting brown people into rainbow bodies, conferring a last rites of passage. Stories abound of well-trained monks who, upon their last breath, burst and expire into a brilliant and beautiful assortment of light and color. So I wait and listen to see what else comes. Was this enough, or how much further do I descend? And this is how I return to death. So join me for the third and final fable, as we awaken or knock on the door of other sarcophagi. I changed the optics and filters I was using to describe the suffering that was coming from and out of the border that I wanted to curtail. What this place does is weaponize an institutional sectarianism of the land and its people. We are seeing what it looks like when sectarianism is institutionalized. My search term expanded and became bordering events which bear the mark of the phenomena of bordering, written sloppily on a notebook. And this text sent me back to Pulse, the infringement that I spoke about in the beginning. To whom does this sadness belong? And it feels like all this neat identitarian lines, they start to crumble and unravel. It's August of 2021. I decide that it's imperative that I build myself a full body cyanotype camouflage suit modeled after existing real camouflage patterns developed by different global armed forces. These patterns are well researched and generously funded by nations. I scrapped most of my white garments and essentially tie-dyed them using the cyanotype process, which involves coating fabric or paper with a green tinted light sensitive chemistry that turns the exposed areas into an indigo blue after it's washed. So I've asked myself, why is it blue? And beyond the upcycling, impoverished methods of fabrication that are involved in this process that I really love, it's blue because, or it's blue to be like the color of the world as vision ends, as shown in Derek Jarman's 1993 film Chroma, a 79-minute static shot of the color blue, documenting the artist's blindness and impending death from AIDS-related illness. Blue like Times Square red, Times Square blue, a memoir delivered as a eulogy to document the disappearance of the intergenerational and interclass contact that occurred and blossomed in pre-gentrified Times Square. Blue like Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg, a call to unite and identify across lines of gender and class, a transhumanist plea to be one and exist as one. I. Blue like Jordan Peele's Inverted World in the 2019 film Us. And the uniform, as that movie spells it out, becomes a crowd adhesive, something used to perform a magical act to get to the other side. In the span of a few days, I make myself a blue camo suit, trying to inspire the blue sad wave, perhaps in other mountaintops. In the video below, in the bottom right corner, I am perched on a tombstone at Hollywood Cemetery, a sprawling Confederate graveyard in Richmond, Virginia. I commit to it. I will travel to Pulse and create another rotating globe image. And this time I will use two cameras. One has one lens, one has only one lens, and the other is the panorama camera with the two fisheye lenses, front and back. The first camera does not create automatic 360 images, so I will have to construct an artificial panorama by rotating the single lens across or along the angles of an 8-pointed star. In this way, the camera is my seal of Solomon, an 8-pointed star which, according to medieval Arabic writers, was worn as a ring engraved by God, giving the wealthy Israelite king the ability to command spirits and jinn. If we follow the trajectory of writing and scribing on stones, what does that make the camera? A magic lamp for what kind of wish-granting genie or demon? Here are all 8 images according to their cardinal directions. So it's blue like a lunatic, touched by moonlight. Insanity was thought originally to be caused by the appearance of the moon in the nocturnal sky. And the killing happened at night. Blue like dreamers, people with heads in their clouds. Blue like dreamers, the political class of immigrants who came to the US as children. I am one of them. I combined North and Northeast from the previous image. So these are only the first 11 people. And I have to reach 49. So I turned the previous image into a cyanotype again to return it to a deeper slumber, doubly blue. It's still August 2021, and I have the second panorama still to be completed. And with the easier camera, I reach that grim number 49, and I start to resent the counting. I hate that I have to do this. I feel myself getting nauseous, my head spinning. So it's blue like seasickness after navigating the afterlife. Blue like Atlanteans, ancient titans from an underground tribe. Blue like fallen heroes. And this begs the question, are they soldiers? And of what war? Blue like Maggie's obsessive spiral. Blue like the anarchist manifesto written by the Invisible Committee in 2007. The book on the right is written by a French coalition group, and they remind us, and this must be extremely known to us now after COVID's readjustment, or perhaps it's more proper to say, COVID's unveiling of several other parasites. It is now publicly understood that crisis situations are so many opportunities for the restructuring of domination. For things remain the same. We watch in horror after Sandy Hook and other mass shootings that gun sales, it is well known, always go up in the aftermath of these mass graveyards. Blue like celestial nights. When 13 American soldiers died in Afghanistan this past August, the newspapers said they died in acts of war, as casualties of war. When 49 queers are killed by a domestic terrorist, in what war did they serve? Soldiers under which banner? Blue like despondent, reluctant draftees. I realize I didn't go to Orlando to take pictures. I went to enshrine a war memorial. As negatives, they're in a fire, but maybe a fire of their own design, like wrathful and transcendent engines. This is the second interactive portion of the presentation. You may pull out your phones if you're able to, if you wish. So I'll give you a little bit of time before I move on to the next slide. And this time, they bar entry into the nightclub. And I wonder, do they even want to be here? This is an unwelcomed membership, to be sure, an unholy seance that they're being asked to join. This photograph shouldn't exist because it shouldn't have happened. This event shouldn't have happened. If these analogs, they mostly live in abstract cyberspaces, what are they to Google? How do host and visitor get along? Is it just a hijacked gallery space or an Easter egg in a maze? Perhaps maybe they're sores on Google's body, or rather perhaps more like bullet wounds on its netting, and they're blue because the nets bleed blue. So it's blue, like the coming insurrection. And let's get serious. You want to be touched and inhabited by other bodies, other extraterrestrials, their foreign biology being a part of yours. And isn't that love?